Good evening, everyone. Who here knows United Technologies, has heard of United Technologies? All right. Who heard of United Technologies before getting all the promotional material from this event? Oh, only one hand. Okay. I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of United Technologies and then share some stories around things we've been working on in the recent past and what we're up to in Brooklyn these days. Great. So a bit about the history of United Technologies. A company largely founded in the mid-19th century by a group of inventors. So these are folks who invented things like the elevator in the 1850s, some of the early technologies for air conditioning units, important things in the modern world like jet engines, and also one business unit has been focused on a lot of the equipment that NASA uses, and that extends all the way back to the early Apollo missions and to some of the current work that is being done in space exploration. Our focus these days is on creating the software and the digital products that surround those hard assets. So you think of these things, machines that have been around for quite a while. I think we all know that the world's becoming data rich and people are doing very interesting things with that data. So we just opened up a new digital unit in Dumbo. If you've been to Dumbo and remember that long warehouse that was derelict on the waterfront for many, many years, that's recently been rehabbed. We just acquired the 4th floor of that building and we're creating a digital innovation unit. We'll be about 250 people. And the focus will be, again, creating software for the future of those 4 industries that I just touched on. So I just want to give you guys a sense of the size of the problems that we grapple with, because United Technologies creates very big things globally. So we have a presence in all countries in the world. So you think about designing anything, and scale is an important consideration. I wanted to just give you a sense of how the consideration set of what you need to account for varies when you talk about size. So let's talk about the first problem space, air. Let's say that you just recently acquired a painting by Jean-Michel Basquiat, New York's own, excellent Haitian-American painter. This is one of his most recently sold paintings called Untitled, sold for about $100 million, which would get you a New York City penthouse if you sold it. Now imagine you have that in your apartment. You probably want to protect it. So you'll probably have some sort of a unit that's monitoring the air, the humidity, the temperature, guarding against variations, extreme variations in that. Now imagine you're trying to do the same thing, but the painting that we're talking about sees about 20,000 visitors per day. It's about 505 years old, and the size of the painting is about 12,000 square feet of fresco. So in this case, we're talking about the Sistine Chapel. Michelangelo started work on that in the early 1500s. He had to pause the work because Rome was sacked in, I think, 1526. Came back later and did the Last Judgment. This is a problem that our CCS business unit worked on. They noticed that calcium was building up on the frescoes, and they hired us to create the HVAC unit that flows air through the space. So going from protecting the painting, which is my initial example, to dealing with something like this, as you can imagine, the variables multiply, the things that you have to account for. So the Vatican didn't want to prevent people from coming through, so we still had to accommodate those visitors. We had to install a system that was invisible. They wanted the space to remain church quiet, as they described it, because it actually is a sacred space where people go to pray. In this case, the client is the Pope, who's not someone who knows a ton about emerging technologies. So just the notion of what you're doing when you're trying to solve for a problem that large. A lot of the team that worked on this was actually quite a small team. It was a team of about 5 people who had hybrid skill sets. And they were a team that was really inspired by the constraints. I think sometimes when people are trying to solve a problem, constraints can be intimidating. The team that worked on this, which was a Franco-American team, was inspired by all these different constraints that I just mentioned. Another problem, space. When you think about a suit, a suit could be a suit that a pilot wears, which is just to identify him in the airport on the plane as a pilot. You think about someone who's flying military aircraft, the suit becomes more of a protective shield against the environment. Now imagine you're trying to create a suit that will enable someone to survive a trip that lasts not hours or days, but several months, a trip that's long enough that you have to bring everything with you, so everything that you take along with you needs to be multifunctional. You have to bring all of the water that you'll need. Water is a key consideration. You have to account for gases, important gases for us like oxygen and carbon dioxide. So of course here we're talking about space travel, and United Technologies has been working on a lot of the equipment that is being used in the proposed mission to Mars. So you're talking about traveling several months away from home. If you forgot anything behind, you're not going back, so you better make sure you bring everything with you. And again, everything on the plane needs to be reused. That includes water. One thing that was very interesting about the work that we've been doing there, you think of the constraint of space being a vacuum. When water is in space, it freezes. So initially, people viewed that as a barrier to work around, but actually it became a mechanism by which astronauts in the suit were able to get rid of excess moisture. So we actually created a barrier where they were pushing the moisture to the perimeter of the suit. It would then freeze when contacting space and would then sublimate, which is turn into a vapor. So it was a way of having moisture and gases flow naturally through the suit in a unidirectional way, because you don't want the vacuum coming in, obviously. And again, a problem of this size, they started by thinking of the things they had done in the past. Again, this was a group that had been working with NASA since the late 60s. They tried to recognize what can be used of what currently existed and what stuff would have to be built net new. So just to sum up, so we have time for some questions. When we think about problems of this size, some key principles are starting with users. I'm sure all you guys are accustomed to designing problems by anchoring in what a user actually needs. What problem are you solving for a human being, rather than focusing on a rigid process. Look at what currently exists and then see where the gaps are. So you're not trying to reinvent the wheel. You're taking the wheels that exist and extending from there. Start by breaking off manageable pieces. Sometimes trying to tackle a big problem can be intimidating. Start by choosing the small things that you think you can solve more readily, and then build out the solution from there. And then the key point here is when you think about constraints in any problem solving, ask yourself the opportunities that constraint opens up. So don't just think of it as a barrier. Think of it as just a factor that you could both work around, but perhaps use to drive toward a solution. Thank you all very much.